Okay, we're recording now, and I'd like to introduce Mark Fritch, who I've known for a lot of years and is specialist work at UNK. I know that he was coaching football at what was the Eola Tri Center,
That's
and
correct.
then I believe he was football at Grand Island. I remember that very well. And then he went to Papillion South and has had a couple of assistant principal at Lewis Central in Iowa. And now it was a principal and Wilbur. How many years were you at Wilbur?
7.
7 years. So, and he last year accepted the position as superintendent at Nebraska City, which is that B or C? It's B, isn't it?
B. Yep. About the smallest B in the state.
Yeah, but it's a significant move to go from principal to a B school. And what I've asked Mark to talk about it a little bit is what the transition is from a principal, which many of you in this class are, to the superintendency, and what some of the challenges might have been, and what kinds of things that he ran into as a first-year superintendent. Of course, we all know the last year was the COVID, so that itself was a challenge. So, Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about when you went to Nebraska City, what you found, and things that helped you, or challenges that showed up, and we'll go from there.
Well, that list could be pretty long, but I think most importantly, nothing anything fancy or unique that I'm going to say, but the job is still about relationships. It's still about what you do to embrace the culture that's already there, and then try to make your mark on what that means. And again, it's not that it's about you, but what can you do to help move the district and the organization forward. So I say that, obviously getting here, I kept a spreadsheet of key stakeholders, and I kept track of every interview and interaction that I had with those. Obviously, I had specific interview questions prepared. There's about 3 or 4 questions I had prepared for board members, admin team, a number of people in the community that I was intentionally going to interview. But then through those interviews, I was asking, who in the community should I reach out to and visit with? And over the course of that, my secretary actually began to help me keep that spreadsheet, and she would actually provide me with cell phones and emails. That list grew to somewhere around 100 and some people in our community that I had contact with, to introduce myself, as well as to get to know their perception of our school district and what we need to be doing for our school and our community. So I mean, those are some of the little things that we did there. That was part of the transition. As far as the difficult part to the transition is that Nebraska City is in a financial crisis that we're in the middle of, and trying to work through that has been difficult. And so in our first year, we've tried to run a levy override election already, and that failed. We have removed, I won't say reduced, but we have removed almost $500,000 in salaries and benefits for next year's budget. We're fortunate that was through attrition, and that we will continue to do that moving forward. And it could very well involve RIF processes in the future. So trying to manage that. The reason I tell you that is that we are in a crisis financially, but we've used that to rally our board. And when I say rally our board, is that they are united, and that we've used it to grow as a team, and they've recognized that their value to work together as a team, and their voice in consensus in the community is pretty valuable going through this process. So that's been a positive, as difficult as it has been. That has united. We have a 9-member board here, so that has united those 9. That's also unique. With that said, we work in committee. So we have 4 committees. We have a finance committee, a policy committee, a building grounds committee, and an education committee. And so everyone serves on at least 2 of those. So we work through committee. We could talk about that for a while if you'd want. But the last thing I would share as far as a transition is, my dad was a superintendent of schools. He's a retired superintendent. Matter of fact, he was great friends with Dr. Nelson. And my dad would at least elaborate to that. I'm not for sure if Dr. Nelson would, but my dad would say they were great friends. But one night at a board meeting, we had a situation that I wasn't prepared for, and I'm texting my dad during the board meeting for advice on how to handle the situation. We had a motion that was improperly read, and it was seconded, and we voted on it before I caught it. And so I'm texting my dad how I handle the situation to get it corrected. I guess those types of things, as I think you've all been told, it's all about your inner circle and who you have to fall back on. Have those people ready and have them on speed dial. I'm very fortunate. Rex File served as an interim superintendent here at Nebraska City for 1 year. Because of the relationship he and I have, I would consider him one of my best friends, and I never even hardly knew him before I got this job. This district, even though we're in a financial mess, chose to keep him as a consultant. Now he charges us mileage about every other time he drives down here. We pay him a couple $100 and I buy him lunch, but he has been a tremendous resource, and there's no way I could have done this job if he wouldn't have been serving in that role to help myself and the district through this financial crisis. So that's kind of a quick intro, but yet long.
Yeah, some of the things that you talked about, I think you getting to know the teachers themselves. How did you approach that?
Well, I'll be honest with you, that's not been the easiest thing with the COVID situation.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, with an email, I invited anyone would be welcome to come to the building, and I would meet and interview them. But I've been very intentional about being visible in the buildings. I've kept it's a silly little goal chart, but I want to visit 2 buildings a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to be in 2 buildings. We have 4 buildings, and I try to be in at least 2 of them every week, so I can at least be visible and get to know the staff. And unfortunately, it's not as well as we wish it would have been, but I take advantage of every professional development opportunity where we've brought small groups together so that I can step in and introduce myself and be a part of those groups. But very intentional with our leadership team. Very intentional with our administration and our what we're call our MTSS leadership team. I'm always present at every one of those meetings. They need to see me and I need to see them. So really empowering our leaders.
Are you, I can hear them talking downstairs. They're hooking up our internet. So we lose you.
Understood.
What about, what's that? Yeah, you better, if you can. Probably 25 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe. They want to know how long before they shut it off. Anyway, so what about, other than the finances, what surprised you about being a superintendent? Being a superintendent's son, there's probably not a lot that surprises you.
Yeah, I guess going through all I taught for 17 years. I think I'm a little unique for administrators that I never really wanted to do this. I wanted to stay in a classroom my whole career. That's what I'd rather be doing. So having that experience and knowing where the real work gets done is in the classrooms and knowing that the classified staff work harder than anyone else in a district. I think I recognize that as well as anyone. And I say all that because I jokingly say this, but it's true. This is the least I've ever worked, and it's the most I've ever been paid. Now, with that said, when you're working, it's stressful, it's intense, and it's demanding. But I spent a lot more time as a coach and a teacher than I do as a superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
And I have control of my time. The best thing about this job is it's on your time. When I was a principal, you never knew what was coming through the door next. When you're a superintendent, they've got some layers to come through. And so you can plan and prepare. And so that's the work. It's the planning and preparing that's the work, so that you're prepared for every one of those situations. And so I say that, and so the amount of time that I've spent reading policy, as much as you think you're prepared and those college classes are getting you ready, you're going to spend more time with that than you realize. And we have a policy committee that at first I didn't value. And I don't mean that I didn't value it, but I was just kind of like, it's policy. But once you get into this position, you're going to want to spend a lot of time with those and with your board so that they understand what's driving the decision making.
What about when you talk about stress? Did you feel there's more stress as a principal or more as a superintendent? I know it's a different kind of stress.
It's different, but I do feel the weight of the community, not just the school or not just the students. Um, So, and part of that might be my, my own ability not to say no, but it didn't take long, and I'm serving on the Economic Development Board of the community. Now the CHI Hospital has asked me to serve on their board. And so when you start looking at my agenda, there's just more things that I'm doing that are outside the school, so to speak. And so when our community is not successful or something like that, you feel a pretty direct part of that as a superintendent of schools.
So do you have any advice on how you handle that stress?
Uh, Try to be, I guess the word I try to use, and I was not good at this when I was younger, but be present. And when I say be present, wherever you're at, be present. And I do think because of how intense this job is, with board meetings and being visible in the community, I think I have done a better job that when I get home that I can be husband and dad. And that's what I mean by be present where you're at, be what you are when you're there. And so make sure you know the difference between those two.
So did you find there was much of a difference for your family between being a principal's spouse and children as being a superintendent's children?
Oh, it's a little bit different. And I think part of it too is the situation from one community to the next. I mean, but I've been in large districts and small districts, and I think part of that is just Nebraska City and the unique size of it, that we're big enough that we're kind of big, but yet we're small enough we're all a family. So everyone knows who your wife is, and yet we're small enough that when something happens, everyone in town knows, but yet, so that's always a tough balance. But I believe growing up with my dad doing it is a public life. I mean, we've chosen not to be private. We've chosen that we're raising our family in the school.
What kind of opportunities do you see as a superintendent that you didn't have as a principal?
Well, I do a weekly, obviously I do it every Friday, a weekly letter, and I'm getting on finishing my first year. So I shared with the board some of the same things I shared with them early on. I have expectations of myself and I have expectations of the board. So I shared those again to remind myself to meet those expectations, but also to remind the board what the expectations are of them. I tell you all that because also in the letter, I told them thanks for their patience and thank you because I cannot believe how much I've learned in 1 year. And I enjoyed being a principal, don't get me wrong, but I probably could have just kept doing it over and over again for quite a while. I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm learning something new every day. Something comes across my desk in an email, a piece of paper, or something to where I have got to spend some time learning more about it before I can make a decision or advise the board on how to proceed. That's a lot of work, but man, it has been very rewarding and enjoyable.
And as far as success with the board, what advice do you have for future superintendents?
Well, I think I'm going to jump around on that question. Ed Rostovsky was also a mentor of mine. He hired me in my first job, and then he went to Wahoo. But he always told me when you're looking at superintendent jobs, there's 3 things that make it a good job: financial situation of the district, facilities, and the Board of Education. And if you have those 3 things, you'll have the job, not easy, but you'll have a pretty good run, and it'll be a district that'll be easy to lead, so to speak. I don't disagree with that, but I'm going to tell you, one is more important than the other 3, the Board of Education.
Yeah.
And I still believe, as difficult a financial situation we're in, we can figure it out. And but you cannot figure out the Board of Education. And so that commitment to those people is very valuable in your success. And I'm pretty shallow. I'm a football coach at heart, and I treat the Board of Education kind of like position coaches. And I'm the head coach and they're my position coaches, and I need to build that team. And now, granted, it's a little different than a team because they are elected officials that have their own independent opinions, voices, and votes, but we still need to grow as a team together. And we do a lot of activities to try to develop and grow that.
Good. I have to inject there that two of my superintendencies were financial situations were very miserable. And you saw it as a challenge. I think as long as you can get your board to understand why there's a challenge there, but been pretty fortunate with having really strong board members, and they did pull together in those issues. So, any last advice for a new superintendent?
Good luck. Feel free. I don't know if there's anything I could ever do to help anyone, but they'd be more than welcome to reach out to me at any time. Only reason is because I know a lot of people have been tremendous to me, including Dr. Nelson. But there's a lot of great people out there that'll help you through it. And believe me, I had no idea what I was getting into, but yet felt I had all the answers, and people sure have been a lot of help to get me through all these situations.
Yeah, I think that's a real emphasis we talk about in this class, like every class, is that network of whether it's former superintendents or classmates that you have now that 10 years from now can give you that advice. And I appreciate your be willing to do this in a busy time of the year, I know. And I apologize for, we're out at our lake home for the class to know, and they're messing with our internet. So I think we're going to get through it. But
well, one more quick shout out for what it's worth here, Dr. Nelson. But so years ago when I was living in Grand Island, we would meet on the interstate and carpool, Rick Rebarger and Jeff Schneider. And it's amazing how I would consider right now one of my first phone calls is to Jeff Schneider. So you think about I get nervous about Zoom because he and I were able to spend 30 minutes in a vehicle all summer driving to classes. But when we got into this financial situation, Jeff Schneider was the business manager at Hastings Public Schools prior to being the superintendent. So I took all our bond payment sheets and all of our financial information out, and he spent about 6 hours with me going through his perspective of our financial situation and what I was thinking we were in. And then he and I have continued obviously to stay in touch, and he walked me through a number of things with regards to levying for bond payments and how we got behind on those. We were $28,000 short on our November payment on our bonds. And now I understand, and I understand now the concept of what we need to do.
Yeah, that was my advice to any superintendent is to go to the school business officials convention. That's where I met a lot of those people that's all they do is finance. And I can remember when Jeff started, I'm amazed that he got into finance the way he did. But he's really a great guy to work with. So.
Oh, tremendous guy.
Well, I'm gonna end this here, and hopefully this recording works. I never know for sure, but